Hello, good morning, everyone. My name is Silenz di Stagni, and I'm going to talk about Kosmicare and the work we do. Kosmicare is a specialized welfare dealing with psychedelic emergencies or just in general substance-induced crisis. Sorry, we don't know how to have two screens, so please don't just read my notes because it might be even bad spelling and all, but just, yeah. Right. So most young people, let's say, enjoy a nightlife entertainment. And the people who go to parties and festivals is very broad. We can say for sure that the big amount of this population, we can't consider them to be drug addicts. However, most of these people are people with work, with families, that go to university, have a normal life. But on weekends, or maybe even more occasionally, they might like to get a bit tipsy and try with different substances. So these people who are, let's say, normal people most of the time, and we can't consider them as drug addicts, they still put themselves in risk, especially because they might binge in, because they do it just very occasionally, that they think, oh, it's okay, and they might take bigger dose, or they might just be victim of misinformation, adulteration, or just find themselves in a much bigger experience than they expected when they took the drug. So it is important to have help around for that. Many times people don't even know much about what they take in, apart from what a friend told them. So there is a lot of help, as we just talked, for people on hard drugs, harm reduction for heroin and cocaine and all the hard drugs, but it's very little for harm reduction for psychedelics and for this kind of population, which I will say is actually much bigger than the population of drug addicts, because it takes a full chunk of all normal people that just do nightclubs or festivals. So it's not much on place for that, but they do exist. The crises, they do exist. So right, so why is important? So there is two reasons. One, a person who is very high in any psychedelic experience, they're in a very sensitive place, and they need special care, so they cannot be pushed into different ways. They have to be treated in a special way, because on the state they are, everything could be major and could create trauma. And it's also the discussion about mental illness being related to psychedelics or toxic psychosis. But there is no enough data, consistent data, that, again, for prohibition, we don't have enough data to actually see that there is a real correlation into that. We don't know if the person had a pre-existing problem and then was exacerbated by the drug, or it's just really the drug that creates that psychosis. So the role of a skillful sitter is essential, is very important. And to have a one-to-one attention when the person is in a really state of crisis is also very, very important. And it's an opportunity to profound cognitive and behavioral change. So yeah, again, the people who gain trouble by taking lots of drugs in general, they obviously know that they're doing something illegal, so that means they will also not talk about, like even they might need a doctor, they will be scared to come forward and say what happened, what they took. Not everybody, but many people do. So they need a special assistance. And they are in a fragile and vulnerable state, and they cannot be brutalized into submission. So there is a substantial body of specialist knowledge that need to be brought into bear when we're dealing with such people. It needs to spread across all the stakeholders, from festival goers, organizers, the medical team, and the police. So 2 basic reasons why people take drugs, let's say, to enhance the life experience, to enjoy, and also to deal with unhappiness or dissatisfaction. So in an ideal world, we will have, all drugs will be labeled with a pragmatic information, with dosage, contraindication, time of duration, and all that. That would be wonderful, but we're not there yet. So while we stuck with prohibition, we need a Kosmicare service, so to help people who go into a crisis just by having fun but go into a bit too much, and also to bring awareness to those people who take drugs as an escape because they are dissatisfied on life and they want to reduce their pain, their emotional pain or whatever other pain. So when the risk so considering that people will stay here and taking drugs anyway, although prohibition is there, these are a bit of the risk of unsupervised use of drugs. So first of all, impurity, because a lot of drugs are adulterated, very rare to find very pure things, especially in a festival. Then dosing errors, because obviously people don't go around, again because prohibition, people don't go around these scales. And when we talk about psychedelics especially, the amounts are so minute that a little bit more, it could be really a major different experience. So then also misidentification. These days we have like millions of different white powders, and they're all being sold as MDMA. And then the drugs interaction, so because people are polyusers, in general alcohol is always mixed with whatever other thing they take in, but through the course of the night or through the weekend people might try a lot of different drugs. I think the candy flop of the 80s is already retro. It's so many different new things that people do, combinations of drugs. And then obviously pre-existing medical conditions, like I said before, maybe somebody have a problem and then they take a drug and everything gets even worse. Or just reckless attitude towards substance use. So, but not all the problems come because substance at festivals. Let's just consider the environment. Festivals normally happen in isolated locations where we have difficulty to get the medical team, maybe, unless the medical team is already there. But many raves, it's not medics around, so we got what we got. And it's many times outdoors event, so we are on the environment. It could be very hot, but it could be very cold, muddy, get rain. Also, a lot of people in these kind of festivals, it's a big amount of people taking psychedelics, and although we put there LSD, DMT, psilocybin, there is a lot more these days, and also in pathogens like MDMA and all kinds of pills, but also not related to drugs will be just sleep deprivation. People maybe go the whole weekend without going to sleep, or maybe they just sleep in a tent on the floor. They sleep in really rough, not good, not half relaxed. So keep taking drugs every day. So that also increase the crisis. Loud sounds, obviously, sometimes in some festivals is no place to come away of the sound, as we just show. And then again, large settings were easy to lose friends, and this is also very common, and then people get into crisis just because they lose their friends. Right. So crisis intervention is a therapy modality characterized by a short-term action, meaning that we're trying to get the person back to functionality, so they can go back to, we don't try it in the psychedelic crisis intervention, we don't try the person to go back to normal straight away. We're actually trying to integrate what is happening to them and really hear what is happening and allow the thing to happen, and then bring the person integrated so they can then function back again and they don't just stay on the clouds and they can be back here. And it's a crisis intervention because obviously at festivals we have very short time limit, which in general is just 3 days maximum in Britain. That's what we're talking about now. And then we use the peer approach, and this is very important, considering that this group of people will not have, will be unreachable by any other protocols. As I say before, people who take drugs and find themselves in trouble, they will not many times look for people who look official. Anything that look official, they will actually hide from. So it's very important to just be a peer approach, a peer person who understands the way they are, and they could be friendly. And then we are that buffer zone where if we need to then take them to the doctors or to any other kind of service, then we will do that, but in a much gentle way. So it's important that they can trust somebody. The way we work is really creating bonds with people. So it's very important to be a peer, to be an equal. So many times people asking what we need to be part of a volunteer harm reduction thing, and this is some basic things. We have knowledge of handling emergency situations, knowledge of psychoactive substances, knowledge of altered mental states. In that case, psychologists come very handy. We really welcome all kinds of people to come and volunteer with us. Also need to be, the volunteer itself have to be quite centered and have a solid ground. Be a teamwork player, because this is, I can't stress enough how much important is the team for us. I mean, we really rely on each other while we working. As I said, we work by creating a bond, and sometimes the person who is on shift might not be able to, for one reason or another, to create a bond with the person in crisis, and we need to call somebody else to help. And also client work suitability, which means that they're not patronizing or condescending to the person who is in crisis, to really realize that is just another me. And to have empathic and caring nature, that's one probably the most important of all these in a list. So the Kosmicare approach, and I put Kosmicare, not only Kosmicare UK, because it's exactly the same at Boom Festival where the project started. So we are non-judgmental, based in honor and respect for what the person is going through. We really hear the person, don't take assumptions. We don't take assumptions of what the person is, but really trying to hear. And when I'm talking about listening, I'm talking about listening with all the senses, so really look the body language and any different things that will tell us how the person is feeling. And we allow the process to unfold and acknowledge that the person can heal itself. And this is a very important point, like not trying to resolve the problem. I mean, we're not there to resolve the problem, it's to facilitate and really trust that especially people who take psychedelics, the psychedelic itself might go to a dark phase, but they naturally, if you give them safety, they naturally come out by themselves through it. And we seek to help them to go deeper in wherever they go, instead of trying to deny what's happening. Just try to go deeper. And we are not directive or confrontational. We don't guide people, we just sit. And we understand that it's a mutual experience for the volunteer, for the facilitator, and for the person in crisis. And it's an opportunity for transformation for both of them as well. Well, the type of emergencies that we might have: medical, in that case we link with the medical team. Psychological, which means that we can, that the person might have some emotional thing that need to talk about and goes through the life problems. Also could be a psychiatric problem that might be pre-existing disorders aggravated by the drug consumption. Also could be a psychedelic one, which is what we're talking about, and so we'll have a different perception of the world, of themselves. But also could be a spiritual crisis that is related to their view of the universe and God and existence itself. First we do when somebody comes into our place, first thing we're trying to check is if their signs are, the vital signs are okay. Obviously, if they're not, we link with the doctor straight away. And then we start being hustled. We're trying to find out what drugs they're ingested and what dosage and at what time. And this is especially to understand, to try to understand, because sometimes too many combinations we can't really know what's going to happen. But try to understand if they are going up or they're in a plateau, they're just coming down of it, just to try to understand how long it's going to take. And then any other drug combinations, like if they took alcohol, probably we can smell the alcohol on them most of the time. But any other drugs, prescription drugs, and if the person have any medical history that also could influence the way he's affected, like diabetes, narcolepsy, or so. How the visitor might be. So it might be anxious, might be scared. In that case, we're trying to provide calmness. That's what we do to create a setting where it's all very calm and very beautiful. And so we provide that first cup of tea, just trying to unload. But it could be difficult for the person to communicate verbally, and yeah, this is not a real problem, especially when people are in psychedelics. I mean, we have, I was in contact with a person in Boom, Portugal, who stayed with us for like 3 days. And I think in those 3 days he only spoke 2 words. But the amount of information and communication that was going through the eyes and expression and body language, it was so amazing. I mean, and it was a profound experience to be with him. Yeah, it was beautiful, but it was no any words exchange. But it could be also that is the opposite, that the person doesn't want any eye contact or any proximity, and they want to be left alone. And in these cases, again, we're trying to respect that. We learn that trying to go to those people, it might even trigger a problem if they think that people are coming to them. You know, just sometimes we just look from afar and realize, okay, that might need a problem, but we don't like go into them until we see that they actually want to be, yeah. People might have unpredictable behavior, and this again, I mean, sometimes people do drug combinations that they really don't see this reality at all, and they might not necessarily be having a bad trip, but they need a sitter because they don't see where they are, and they might walk through fences, fall on rivers, walk in a fire. So they need somebody next to them just to help them. And they cannot even, maybe they don't even realize that we are a person next to them taking care. And people can just run away or do all kinds of things or expect the unexpected. And unable to abide by social rules, and obviously a lot of nakedness, people very high, I don't know why is that, so everybody won't take their clothes off. This is great. Also, well, it could be paranoid, and they will talk a little bit about paranoia, and sometimes those cases of paranoia are really difficult because, as I say, the way we work is by bonding with the person, but when the person thinks that we are about to do something to them, it's very difficult. So as you say, I mean, the way we deal with that, when they think that everybody's against this conspiracy against them, we need at least one person to believe what they're saying and believe that the conspiracies happen, so they can feel that somebody's on their side. You know, because if you try to deny it and say, no, it's not happening, it's not true, this is you imagining, that doesn't work. They could be angry, and when they're angry, it can be super strong. In those cases, we call the security. In general, sorry, I didn't mention before, when we go to a festival, first thing we do is to talk to the medical team and the security team, and we explain what we do and what we are. And so with the security, in general, we explain how we want restrain a person if we need to. And we have been very lucky. We had very good securities in all the festivals we've been. They've been very helpful. And the way to hold the person when they do it, because he's a very strong person, they will hold it in a way that is not a brutal way, but at least the person is not hitting each other. But when we do it, we do the spooning restraint, I say, because it's like coming from the back, where you go away from all the punches and spitting and biting and all those things that they tend to do in those cases. And just by holding from behind, full arms, and sometimes with the legs over their legs as well. So we really stop them moving and hurting themselves. And at the same time, they feel the contention of being hugged and slowly stop. Another very common thing is to be in a loop. I mean, I didn't know about this before I started to work with Kosmicare, but I realized it's such a common thing when people take a lot of acid, that they go into a mental loop where they repeat 3 or 4 words or 3 or 4 sentences, and it goes again and again for hours on end. And what we do in these cases, we say that we ride the loop. We don't just ignore, oh, they're just saying the same, but we keep interacting with that. Whatever sentence they're saying, we just keep talking to them and answer back, and they carry on. And that loop, they might say the same sentence just with different expression every time, with a different eye, or, you know. But then, yes, sooner or later, as we interact, after a few hours, suddenly they say something different, and we were like, oh, yes, it's out of it. And sometimes they don't even remember they've been talking the same thing for hours. It doesn't matter. Really? My God. Oh, well, so yes, so I'm just really at the end. The treatment we have, we create a bond, as I say, empathy, listening, gentle restraint. So I talk about all these things and provide a place to sleep. So just to summarize, this is what we do. We give an empathetic and non-judgmental response to a crisis situation. We provide water and drinks and blankets and substance information, and then try to facilitate a life-enriching experience in a supportive environment. And for that, we are relentlessly kind. So, thank you.